On behalf of the Center for the Study of Race and BALSA, the Black Law Students Association here at the University of Virginia, I am thrilled to welcome you all today to celebrate both the legacy of Martin Luther King as well as Gregory Swanson. So my name is Kimberly Jenkins Robinson, and I am a professor of law here. I am the Martha Lubin Karsh and Bruce A. Karsh Bicentennial Professor of Law, as well as the White Burkett Miller Professor of Law. I also founded and direct the Education Rights Institute, and I am honored to welcome you all here today. So we celebrate King for so many reasons. We celebrate him for his vision for a better nation at a time when we were living with deep segregation, injustice, violence that was both race-based and a reign of terror, really, and the time in our nation. And he really stepped forth as a very, very young man to lead, and he really put his life and his family's life on the line to help our nation achieve some of its really founding principles in ending segregation and moving us forward to a more just and equal society. And I thought it was fitting to start with some of his own words, just a few quotes that I'll read, and then I will jump right into introducing our wonderful dean, Leslie Kendrick. So when we look at Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, that was in April 1963, so try to put yourself back into the nation at this time. He says many things about justice, and I thought that as a law school that it would be wise to remember those as we think about honoring King, and also about the work that we all do here, training young lawyers, becoming future lawyers, and just the role that we serve as lawyers in society. So he writes, "I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere in its borders." In his calls for nonviolent protest, Dr. King stated, "We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I've yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was well-timed in the view of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I've heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see, with one of our distinguished jurors, that justice too long delayed is justice denied." And then lastly, I'll end with this quote. Dr. King also said, "Law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress." So as we celebrate today, we celebrate a wonderful student to give an award to, as well as just the teaching that so many of us do, the work that you all are doing to become lawyers, the service that you give to the community and really around the world. Let us all, like Dr. King, push our communities, our Commonwealth, and our nation toward the laws and order that establish justice and not be content by those who tell us to wait. So before introducing Dean Kendrick, I also want to thank Megan Durkee and the entire Swanson Selection Committee for the work that they put in to identify our wonderful honoree today. And now I have the privilege of introducing one of our esteemed speakers, Dean Leslie Kendrick, who will present the Swanson Award. So Leslie Kendrick is the 13th, we haven't had that many, 13th Dean and the Arnold H. Leon Professor of Law at the University of Virginia School of Law. She's an expert on torts and freedom of speech, whose work has appeared in the Harvard Law Review, the Yale Law Journal, and Philosophy and Public Affairs, among many other journals. She is an amazing and distinguished scholar. She's also co-author of the casebook, Tort Law, Responsibilities, and Redress. She's a member of the American Law Institute. She earned her BA from UNC Chapel Hill as a Moorhead Scholar, her master's and doctorate from Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, and her JD from UVA as a Dillard Scholar. She clerked for Judge Harvey Wilkinson III of the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals and Judge Justice David Hackett Souter of the U.S. Supreme Court. Please join me in welcoming Dean Kendrick to the podium.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. Good afternoon. Welcome to the law school's Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration and the presentation of the Gregory Swanson Award. I want to thank Professor Kimberly Robinson, who spearheaded these events. Thank you also to your team, to Law IT, to Communications, to everyone who has worked so hard to make today possible. I also want to recognize a few other folks in the audience who made today possible by creating this celebration. I see Risa Galyubov, I see Randy Flaherty and Amy Wharton and other members of our library, folks who established this award and this ceremony in 2018. We're very grateful to you for doing that and grateful to have you here with us. I also want to thank George Martin for speaking to us today. You will hear more about and from Mr. Martin shortly, but he's the former managing partner of the Richmond office of McGuireWoods, where he practices commercial real estate, construction, and local government law. He's a proud graduate of the University of Virginia and a former member and rector of the university's Board of Visitors. George, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to hearing your remarks. My happy role today is to present the law school's Gregory Swanson Award to a remarkable student. We give this award at our community's Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration because Gregory Swanson is both an important part of the history of our school and also an indelible part of the civil rights story of our university, our community, our Commonwealth, and our nation. Before I talk about this year's award winner, I'll share a very brief version of Mr. Swanson's story. Gregory Swanson was the first Black student at the law school, the first Black student at the entire University of Virginia, and the first student to study on an integrated basis at any formerly white university in the former Confederacy. This past September marked the 75th anniversary of his admission to the law school, and this school year is the 75th anniversary of his residence at the law school. Mr. Swanson had received his undergraduate and law degrees at Howard University in 1945 and 1948. He then applied to UVA for an LLM degree. The law school faculty voted to admit him, but the university's Board of Visitors refused. Mr. Swanson sued in the United States District Court for the Western District of Virginia. He was represented by the firm of Hill, Martin, and Robinson and the Virginia chapter of the NAACP. And his legal team included civil rights giants such as Oliver Hill, Martin A. Martin, Spotswood Robinson, and Thurgood Marshall. Oral argument in the case was held here in Charlottesville in a building that's now the Central Library downtown on Market Street. It then was the Federal District Courthouse. You can go there and see the very room that the case was argued in and read a plaque commemorating Mr. Swanson's victory. In September 1950, the court ruled in Swanson's favor, and 10 days later, he registered for classes in time to start the 1950 school year as the first Black student of the University of Virginia. Mr. Swanson's own words describe how this triumph was also a burden. He was the only Black student at a white university at a segregated white southern town. He wrote his sister about walking the mile to the law school from Vinegar Hill, where he lived, a historically Black Charlottesville neighborhood, and being stared at by white passersby who likely recognized him as the first Black student at UVA. He wrote, "I should like to read their minds. Sometimes I think that I do." He was often socially isolated, but he also found support among some students and faculty and from the local YMCA. Looking back years later, he said he knew there might be reactions, no matter how covert, to my admission, but I felt I was adequately prepared to meet them. And indeed, he did. Mr. Swanson rose to every challenge. He took 8 courses over the academic year, even though LLM students were not required to take any. He participated in university life fully, writing to his sister that he was endeavoring to participate in university activities as much as possible so the white students would get used to having black classmates, taking on more for himself and more on himself to make the path smoother for those who succeeded him. And he told his story and stood up for civil rights both here and around the Commonwealth as a frequent speaker and editorial writer. Ultimately, Mr. Swanson did not complete his LLM degree, but that was a product of a strange feature of the law school's academic program at the time. Like all good stories, this turns on the academic policies of a university. Now becomes briefly a story about bureaucracy. In the early 1950s, the UVA LLM degree required students to write a master's thesis after they had finished their time in residency in Charlottesville. As you can imagine, many LLM students did not do that. They left the law school after having completed their year of residency and found work, returned to work as lawyers, found other productive work as lawyers, and the thesis requirement receded from the top of their mind. Mr. Swanson successfully completed his year in residence, including taking all those courses that were not a requirement, and then, like so many others, found his career taking him in other directions. He practiced law in Martinsville and Alexandria, fighting for civil rights causes both in and out of the courtroom. In 1961, he joined the IRS under Commissioner Mortimer Kaplan, and I note that detail because Mr. Kaplan, in addition to being a famous tax lawyer and the co-founder of the firm Kaplan and Drysdale, and the person for whom this room is named, actually, was also a 1940 graduate of the law school who happened to be on the law faculty at the time of Gregory Swanson's application. He was a fierce advocate of Mr. Swanson's admission and later recruited Mr. Swanson to the IRS, where he practiced until his retirement in 1984. Mr. Swanson died at his home in Maryland in 1992. He was survived and is survived by his wife, Betty, and his two daughters, Karen and Camille, all of whom are beloved members of our UVA family. At the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of Swanson's admission, which was held in the Central Library this fall in the very courtroom in which the case was held, Camille gave remarks, and I had an opportunity to speak to Karen on the phone late last year. Their memories of Gregory Swanson, the person and the father, are a powerful reminder that his courage and triumph are not only history, but a living part of our community today. For all his many contributions, Gregory Swanson has been honored by both the Maryland and Virginia General Assemblies. His portrait hangs in Clay Hall right outside this room. And in 2018, the law school established the Gregory Swanson Award to honor Gregory Swanson and outstanding members of our community today who are following his path through their courage, perseverance, and commitment to justice. And with that, I'm delighted today to say a few words about the winner of our 9th annual Swanson Award, Amelia Isaacs. Amelia is a summa cum laude graduate of Florida State University, where she majored in political science and served in leading roles in student government as a trustee of the Student Foundation and as chair of the Student Conduct Board. Throughout her time here in Charlottesville, Amelia likewise has been an incredible leader. She has served as the secretary and a 1L senator to our Student Bar Association, the historian for BALSA, the Black Law Students Association, an editorial board member of VLR, the Virginia Law Review, a member of UVA's Raven Society, and of course also as president of BALSA, where among other things, she started the chapter's Endless Possibilities Partnership with local public elementary schools and led the chapter to its most recent recognition as the Mid-Atlantic BALSA Chapter of the Year. Amelia spent her 2L summer at Steptoe in Washington, D.C., and spent her first-year summer working as both a research assistant for Professor Andrew Hayashi and as a policy intern at Covenant House in New York City. In this letter supporting Amelia's nomination, Professor Andrew Hayashi wrote that Amelia was an enthusiastic and conscientious participant in our reparations class who consistently modeled empathy as well as intellectual rigor as we discussed topics that are emotionally charged. She was honest, but also open-minded, which I think is its own kind of courage. Many, many students, faculty, and staff wrote letters supporting Amelia's nomination for this award, and most of them talked about the enormous amounts of time and effort that Amelia pours into her community. One of her many recommenders explained that Amelia, like Mr. Swanson, sees her time at UVA Law as part of a grand plan, a legacy of positively impacting the legal community. A 2L recommender writes that in those first weeks, when law school felt like a crowded room and I wasn't sure where to go, Amelia welcomed me. That generosity was not only reserved for me. Over the year, I watched Amelia pour herself into people and causes she holds dear. Amelia's classmate, a third-year classmate, put it this way: while many 3Ls disappear, Amelia has stayed present, supporting 1Ls in ways that go above and beyond. When a 1L asked her to teach them how to take notes, she was there. When another asked her to review their practice exam, she began reviewing her old notes. It made me realize that during her time in student leadership, Amelia did not help students simply because that was part of the role. She sought out these positions because she cannot help but help others, and she would do so with or without a title, without recognition, for as long as she was able. The letters supporting Amelia's nomination for the Swanson Award all echoed these same themes: that Amelia's leadership style is both utterly professional and deeply personal, as she connects with genuine warmth and care to her colleagues and classmates; that she fosters a more inclusive and compassionate community, less through isolated grand gestures than through countless daily thoughtful acts that accumulate into something profound; that she is a selfless and courageous servant leader who's unafraid to do what is right rather than what is popular; and that through her many overlapping roles within our community, as a student and as a law review editor, as an organization leader and a community volunteer, as a research assistant and a friend, Amelia lifts up the people around her, and we are all the better for it. For all of her many contributions, I am delighted and honored to present this year's Swanson Award to Amelia Isaacs.
To start, I want to thank the entire Swanson Award Committee and everyone who comes together each year to honor the memory of Gregory Swanson and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. III, or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am grateful to attend an institution that is unwavering in its dedication to honoring two people who built bridges and inspired change in the face of overwhelming division. I'm also deeply thankful to everyone who took the time to nominate me for this award. This honor is something that I will cherish and try to live up to for my entire life. I'm extremely grateful to be here today. My childhood was difficult for a lot of different reasons. My parents divorced when I was young, and close members of my family were diagnosed with schizophrenia. But luckily for me, those hard times are a small footnote in my story. Today, they only make me more appreciative of the beauty of life, friendship, love, and happiness. So today, I want to talk about something simple to me and transformative. I want to talk about love. Growing up, my life looked very different from that of many of my friends, and for years I was terrified to tell them why. I invented stories, changed the subject, and I deflected. I carried shame and isolation like a secret. And then one day I made a choice. I sat down with two of my best friends and I told them my truth, that mental illness had shaped my home life and that it often made me feel alone. And I expected the worst. But what I got instead was my two best friends, who were rarely ever serious, listening. They didn't laugh, they didn't whisper. They reminded me that my family and I were deserving of compassion and of love. That response changed me. Up until that moment, I had convinced myself silence would be easier for everyone. But telling myself I had something to hide meant telling myself I had something to be ashamed of. And that assumption, created by me, was far more damaging than anything anyone else might say, because it left no room to question it. It was only when others so effortlessly assumed that there was nothing to be ashamed of that I could begin to believe them and let go of the stigma that I carried. Everything I am today, and everything I keep trying to become, comes from one experience of being seen, accepted, and loved by my friends. Knowing how compassion and kindness had the power to change my life, it is my #1 goal to lead with love when I serve. And the beautiful thing about it is that by putting love into the universe, I've received so much of it back. Being BOLSA president has been one of the most meaningful things. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. So being BOLSA president has been one of the most meaningful things that I've ever done, and from the moment that I've stepped onto grounds, BOLSA has been my family. I'm so thankful for the beautiful relationships that I've formed with the entire chapter of BOLSA. Thank you. I love you guys. To my friends, whether we started this journey together as 1Ls or found each other along the way, I love you. Your companionship, laughter, and solidarity has been a constant source of strength for me. To the faculty and staff, law school was once terrifying for me. When I started, I felt like I knew nothing and could never learn it all. Thank you to every professor who met my endless emails and office hour questions with patience, who humored my nervous jokes during cold calls, and who served as mentors. A special thank you to professors and deans Kendrick, Robinson, Professor Stetson, Hayashi, Rutherglen, Woolhandler, Livingston, Sahadi, and to Roseanne Ibanez, Dean Davies, and Stacy Chung. And to my partner, Kyle Trotman. Last semester, Professor Sahadi told me one of the reasons that she'd been able to thrive through long hours and the pressures of the profession is a choice of a supportive partner. You have been that for me. For 3 years, you have been an unwavering constant, my biggest cheerleader, my favorite study partner, and my best friend. Your thoughtfulness, kindness, and indomitable spirit is so powerful that it can't help but to shine in every single thing that you do. So thank you. And most importantly, to my mom sitting in the second row, I love you. I love you more than I can put into words. You are the most beautiful, funny, stylish, and kind person I know. Everything good in me comes from you. Standing here, I wish I could tell you that I was guided by some extraordinary courage or unique resilience, but the truth is a lot simpler. I choose what brings me the most love, warmth, and happiness to myself and others, and the rest has been a lucky byproduct of that choice. If Gregory Swanson and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. teach us anything, it's that ordinary people can make change by choosing courage and love over fear. That is the kind of legacy I hope to honor with this award. Thank you.
I just want to pause for a second and let that sink in. I feel like jumping right in seems wrong, so I just kind of want to pause and just soak all of that up. That was incredibly beautiful. I now have the honor of introducing Mr. George Keith Martin. He's a former managing partner of the largest office of McGuireWoods law firm. And as Dean Kendrick said, he serves as counsel at McGuireWoods now and practices real estate, construction, and local government law. So before I list Mr. Martin's many accolades, I have to share that I met Mr. Martin my 1L summer of law school. So I came to McGuireWoods eager to learn and explore the law, and Mr. Martin took me under his wing and has nurtured me as a mentor ever since. So it is with great delight that I could stand here and introduce him and share him with all of you. Mr. Martin is a proud Wahoo and also a graduate of Howard Law School. And he was appointed to the UVA Board of Visitors in 2011, was elected vice rector a year later, and in 2013, you should know that he became the first African American to serve as rector. He teaches a real estate finance seminar focused on public-private partnerships at UVA School of Law. So some of you may be privileged to have him as a professor. He's received many awards, so I'm only going to name a few, and honors throughout his career, including the American Jurisprudence Award in Administrative Law, the NAACP Black Student Alliance Image Award, the John Jasper Trailblazer Award, the Richmond Public Schools Foundation Living Legend Award, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Raven Society, the oldest and most prestigious honor society at UVA. Mr. Martin lives a life of service. In addition to previously leading the Board of Visitors, he serves on the University of Virginia Investment Management Company Board as chair of the Miller Center Governing Council, and on the University of Virginia School of Architecture Foundation Board, and on Fulton Incorporated and Fulton Financial Corporation Board. So we can see that Mr. Martin is very busy, and we're very fortunate to have him with us today. He also was the first African American to serve on the Virginia Board of Bar Examiners. He and his wife had 3 adult daughters, 2 of whom attended UVA. And for 34 years, he taught 5- and 6-year-olds at his church. So please join me in giving a warm UVA Law welcome to George Martin.
Well, thank you for those generous introduction. It's a great honor to be here today, and I'm going to give a disclaimer on the front end. So first of all, I used to be a litigator, but I'm not anymore, and I am a transactional guy, so I'm much more comfortable sitting at a conference table. And Professor Robinson also mentioned the fact that I taught 5- and 6-year-olds. So we taught the students using puppets. So if you see my hand go up like that, it's just a reflex. I want to congratulate you, Amelia, and thank you for those heartfelt remarks. I think we all were touched by your comments and your transparency, and thank you so much. So let's give her another hand, please. So I kind of feel like you should be the keynote speaker instead of me, and I just want to encourage you to continue the good work that you're doing now. But we're so proud of you, and thank you for all that you've done, and hope you continue. So my theme today is patient, persistent, purposeful, the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King. But before I embark on that journey, I must obey Professor Robinson. And I learned long ago, when she speaks, I listen. When she speaks, I obey. And she instructed me. She didn't ask, she told me that I had to share a little bit of my journey. So I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes there, but I have to obey her. Like Mr. Swanson, I attended Howard Law School, which seemed like a good idea at the time, especially given my family's very, very rich history with Howard. My dad went to Howard. My grandfather went to Howard. My great uncle, George Martin, for whom I'm named, went to Howard. In fact, he graduated #1 in his med school class, and to this day, he had the highest GPA of anyone to graduate. And I often joke that I got his name, but not his brains. My aunt went to Howard, and my mother went to Howard. And that's my problem. My mother graduated #1 in her law school class, and she had the highest score on the Ohio bar. So I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to follow in her footsteps. And I also had some of the same professors that she had. And I should note, I mentioned that we have a rich tradition with Howard. Howard has conferred 30 degrees on my family members. So, but while I was in law school, I was convinced that I would be better served if I went to work in Richmond, Virginia. But none of the Richmond firms interviewed at Howard. So I literally had to do the resume drop. And I wrote to the 5 largest law firms in Richmond. And the funny thing is, I got an interview with 4 of them. The only one that didn't invite me back for an interview is the firm I work for now, McGuireWoods. So I started my law career, and 2 weeks in, I'm working on the largest case ever filed. I started as a litigator, so I'm working on the largest case ever filed in the Eastern District of Virginia Federal Court. And I joked that if that case had not settled, I would still be working on it because it was a huge antitrust case, and it just went on forever and forever. But the irony is McGuireWoods was on the other side of us in that case. And so after the case settled, they tried to recruit me, but that didn't go anywhere. And then fast forward to 1989, they came back again, and they were successful in recruiting me. What was interesting, though, was I joined the firm as an equity partner, and I was the second person who joined the firm as an equity partner. The previous individual who joined as an equity partner was Governor John Dalton. And so they told me that Dalton was the only person that they had extended that to, and I said, why stop there? But in any event, that's how I managed to join the firm, and the rest is history. So we know that Mr. Swanson was the only African American here at the law school when he was a student. And I did not know Mr. Swanson, but I knew John Merchant, who followed him, and I knew Harold Marsh, who also followed him. And I mentioned earlier that I taught 5- and 6-year-olds. Ironically, I taught 5- and 6-year-olds with John Merchant's sister. And John Merchant was a delightful guy, and if you get a chance, I would definitely recommend that you read his 500-page autobiography. But he was just a remarkable individual. He also was, I think, the first African American to be president of the USGA Golf Association, and was very close to Tiger Woods and very instrumental in his development. But he was extremely humble, because when his daughter asked me one Sunday, did you go to UVA? I said, yes. She said, yeah, my brother went to UVA. And I said, well, who's your brother? And she said, John Merchant. And I almost fell out. I said, gosh, he was my hero. And I listed all the great things that he had done. She was not aware of it. She said he was just that humble. He never bragged to us. There's another dear friend of mine who I have to mention. That's the Honorable John Charles Thomas, whose portrait also hangs out in the hallway. And Justice Thomas, when I started working in Richmond, was the only other African-American lawyer working for a large law firm. And we know that when Swanson was here, he was the only African-American at the law school. Well, not only was I the only African-American lawyer working at my law firm, I was the only African-American employee, period. So I developed a really, really good friendship with the folks who were on the night crew. That was the only time I saw African Americans, was when I saw the cleaning crew at night. So enough about me. Let's turn to Dr. King. So we gather here today not merely to commemorate a life, but to learn from a model of leadership. One that reminds us that it's relevant for our times to think about leadership. So when we say the name Dr. Martin Luther King, we often think of soaring rhetoric, historic marches, moral courage. But beneath the speeches and the symbolism was something even more enduring. and that was a disciplined approach to leadership. Leadership that was patient, persistent, and purposeful. These are not passive virtues, they are active disciplines, and they defined Dr. King and his legacy. So let me offer a definition to guide us today. Leadership is visionary, strategic, purposeful, able to motivate, collaborative, inspiring, and empowering others to implement a vision. So measured by that standard, Dr. King was not simply a civil rights leader. Indeed, he was one of the most complete leaders America has ever produced. He didn't hold elected office, he didn't command an army, he didn't control wealth, yet he reshaped the moral direction of our nation. And his authority came not from position, but from vision, discipline, collaboration. And first and foremost, Dr. King was a visionary. So at a time when segregation was embodied in law, in custom, and culture, he articulated a vision of an America that did not yet exist, but should. He not only condemned injustice, he imagined a beloved community grounded in dignity, equality, and shared responsibility. Visionary leadership does not ask what is politically convenient. Rather, it says what is morally necessary. And that is clearly the message of Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King's dream was not fantasy. It was a disciplined vision anchored in America's founding ideals, calling the nation to live up to its own words. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But vision alone is not leadership. Vision must be paired with strategy. Nonviolence for Dr. King was not accidental. It was not naive. It was deliberate, studied, and disciplined. You see, he understood power, and he understood that violence would undermine moral authority and fracture public support. Nonviolence, on the other hand, exposed injustice without becoming a part of it. Dr. King's leadership was indeed purposeful. His purpose did not change with public opinion. It did not retreat in the face of danger. And it was anchored in a conviction that injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere. We've heard that quote on numerous occasions, including just a few moments ago. Leadership without purpose becomes management. Leadership with purpose becomes a movement. One of Dr. King's most misunderstood qualities, however, was patience. Patience did not mean complacency, it meant endurance. He rejected the notion that justice should wait indefinitely, yet he understood that deep and lasting change unfolds as you implement a strategy. So let's think, for you sports fans, let's think about a running back who waits patiently for the offensive line to block and open up a lane to run through. Or a general who understands that timing is critical. Timing is everything. And it often takes patience to wait for the right time to let the strategy unfold. That's how Dr. King approached things. If patience is endurance over time, persistence is the refusal to quit. So leadership is not proven just by early success, but by faithfulness in adversity. So let's go back to my earlier statement about him. And let's think about the founding ideals. And I want you to go with me for a minute. Give me a little flexibility, a little liberty here. And at the University of Virginia, we often participate in what we call Jeffersonian dinners. So let's imagine a Jeffersonian dinner. And This Jeffersonian dinner is going to take place at Monticello. So Jefferson himself is not there. He's in France, like in the play Hamilton. But he has offered his home for this Jeffersonian dinner. So let's picture a dinner. And seated together are James Madison, James Monroe, Patrick Henry, George Washington. So these are the men who gave birth to a nation, but they left its promise unfinished. And across from them, we have Dr. King and his lieutenants, John Lewis, Andy Young, and Jesse Jackson. And these are the men who inherited the unfinished promise and refused to let it die. So this is not a dinner of accusation, but of reckoning. It's not a trial, but a conversation about leadership, liberty, and responsibility. In fact, this is America dining with America. So Madison gestures to the Declaration of Independence, and he says, "It declares that all men are created equal. We believed it as a truth, but we fail to live it fully." And Dr. King responds, "The words were not wrong, they were just incomplete. And history called on us to complete them." So Madison reflects on the constitutional evolution, and John Lewis speaks of the 14th Amendment as the nation's second founding. And Dr. King reiterates, the Declaration was a promise, the Constitution a framework, and the 14th Amendment a commitment. And our movement was to demand that America keep its word. Andrew Young adds, "We did not come here to tear down the house. We came to insist that every room be open." And Madison joins in. He says, "Dr. King, take us to that day in August when you gave that speech in front of the Lincoln Memorial. What was your dream?" And King replied, "My dream was not new. It was drawn from the words of the Declaration, and we simply asked America to live by those words." And Madison responds, "Then leadership is not only founding institutions, but sustaining ideals." And King answers, "Leadership must be patient. It must be patient enough to wait for the right strategy, persistent enough to press, and purposeful enough to endure." So the candles burn low, the evening is getting late. King continues, and he says, "America is strongest when it listens to its conscience across generations. The Declaration declared equality, the 14th Amendment enforced it, and my speech, I have a dream, humanized it. So may we lead with vision, act with strategy, remain patient as that strategy unfolds, and persist when the cost is high, and live purposefully, empowering others to carry that vision," Dr. King noted. So today, my friends, I say to you that Dr. King's dream lives on. We should adopt his standard for leadership. We should learn from the lessons that he taught us as a leader. And perhaps his greatest legacy is the fact that he inspired so many people. And I definitely think that all of you are inspired by the teachings, the speeches, the actions of our moral leader, Dr. Martin Luther King. So the Declaration declared equality, the 14th Amendment enforced it, and Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech humanized it. May we all lead with vision, may we all act with strategy, and may we all remain patient and let the strategy unfold. May we persist when the cost is high, and may we live purposefully, empowering others to carry forth the vision of our great leader, the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you.